Now, when 9-year-old William Palmer was born, his parents had no reason to believe that he was anything other than a happy and healthy baby boy. But at 3 months old, they discovered that a rare gene he'd inherited meant he was profoundly deaf. But at 2 years old, William had his first cochlear implant, and it was fitted then. He's here today, along with his dad, Andy, to tell us how his life has changed. So welcome to both of you.
Hello.
Andy, can we go back to your childhood, because you grew up in a largely deaf family?
Yeah, that's right. It's not my brothers and sisters or any cousins. It's mum and dad have also got brothers and sisters who are also deaf, so there's like a generation in the family that have got hearing loss.
So you carried a gene?
Yeah, that's right. So I carry a gene, it's called connexin 26, and there's a fault on that gene, and it's a recessive fault. So in order to be deaf, you need to have 2 copies, one from mum, one from dad, and I'm just a carrier of it. So that's the gene I carry, yeah.
And, of course, then you meet someone and decide to have a baby, and incredibly, because the odds are very, very, very high,
yeah,
you both carried the gene.
That's right, yeah. I think the chances are, I might need to be corrected, but I think it's around about a 1 in 70,000 chance that that would happen. But even if you do get together, it's still a 1 in 4 chance that you'd have a child who had a hearing loss. So
did you know that when you decided to have a baby, that you were both carrying?
I had absolutely no idea. It never actually occurred to me. I didn't think it was a genetic thing. The hearing loss had been in the family before, and all the children in my family, all the cousins, so there must have been 15 of those, and then all the grandchildren, of which William was number 10, were all hearing. So as far as we were concerned, no, it's sort of a thing of the past.
So when he was a baby, what were the signs to you that something not quite right with his hearing?
Well, to me, absolutely none. I wasn't looking for it, so we had to go for a hearing test anyway because of the genetic hearing loss. So these days, if you want to get all babies are tested at birth, so you'd find that out straight away. But back then, William had a hearing test at 3 months old, so that's when we first found out.
Yeah, they do the clap test, don't they, now, as soon as the baby's born, and see the reaction for the baby.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, the way it worked for then, it's they put sensors on the head, and William has to be asleep.
So this was more scientific?
Yeah, more scientific, that's right. But my dad said, actually, that he'd been testing all the kids anyway, himself, to see if they were deaf or not, by clapping hands and dropping keys and things.
Right.
And he said that this is after William was diagnosed, he said that he thought William was deaf.
So he'd already kind of come to that conclusion.
Yeah, he'd already cottoned on, yeah.
Yeah. So 3 months, you're told, he's profoundly deaf. Coming from a family where deafness was around you, and you probably understood more than most about how that affects people's lives, what were your initial thoughts?
When we discovered that he had a hearing loss, well, I think initially it is shocking news, so you take that on board. But I always felt that to me, deafness is not something that's to be scared of or worried about, because in my life, all my role models, my dad and my uncles and all their friends, were all deaf, and they're the people I looked up to and respected. So for me, it was never something that I believed was anything that was going to have to stop you in life or stop you achieving. So in that sense, I wasn't scared about it, and I felt that I was in a unique position because I'd learnt sign language to be able to pass that language on to William.
So you just assumed that William would have a life of signing?
It wasn't that. It's not that cut and dry, because hearing loss has varying different levels. So initially, you try and use hearing aids to aid that, but there was no sign really that any of that was working. So the best way to communicate was through using sign language.
And at what stage did you learn that perhaps a cochlear implant could be something for William?
Well, it was a coincidence, really. We were using hearing aids, and we had the most powerful hearing aids that a kid can get, and we weren't really getting any sort of response. And me and William went to a cafe, and we sat there, and William was in a high chair, and we were using a bit of sign language just to talk over what we were having for dinner and stuff.
He was, at this stage?
2. Yeah, 2 years old. About 2 years old. And I think he's about 1.5. And a parent spotted us with her deaf child and came over, noticed we were using sign language, came over, introduced themselves, and their daughter had a cochlear implant, and she spoke straight, she spoke to me, said hello, and I spoke to her, and it was then that we really thought we'd look down the road.
So until that point, had you considered a cochlear implant? Did you know much about them?
Yeah, not really, no, not at that point. It's not something we've been directed towards, but it was at that point when we met them that we decided to investigate it further, and look into it. And as soon as the hearing aids didn't work, then we really went for it, because there was no other option. And
when you went to your doctor or specialist and said, this is the way we'd like to go, what kind of advice did they give you, and how easy did they say it was going to be?
Well, cochlear implants aren't for everybody, so there's an assessment process. But as soon as it was understood that the that hearing aids couldn't ever provide a loud enough volume that as soon as that was realised, we went down the assessment programme for cochlear implants. So that's about checking that the cochlears are healthy, that William's a smart enough lad to be able to have cochlear implants and work with, and that's how. And so we went through that assessment process, and when you clear that, you go for the operation.
His first implant was at 2 years old?
That's right, yeah.
And there you are after the operation, William. You've got your very big bandage on there. And how did he respond to the operation? How did he respond to the implant?
William's been fantastic with the cochlear implant, haven't you?
But at that stage, when you're 2 years old, William, you haven't spoken at all until that point. Suddenly you're hearing things for the first time. I can't imagine you remember what it was like at 2, but presumably the whole world opened up for you. What was that like?
Well, it was like that I had good hearing directions when I could hear. Good hearing directions. When my friends are speaking, my parents, it sounds really good when I get to hear.
Yeah.
So you could hear their voices, and you began to. What did you think of your dad's voice when you first heard it?
Well, I can hear it really loud, and he's speaking perfectly loud and clear.
I've got a really good voice as well, haven't I, William? Really smooth, sounds really good.
For you as a parent, now at 2 years old, most kids are kind of jabbering away there. So you've got to start now teaching William to speak and to recognise what noises are, because most hearing babies have grown up with those noises.
Yeah, absolutely. Delaying speech for 3 years, 2 or 3 years, it makes a big difference in speech development. But in terms of language development, and we'll take that a bit differently, we've been using sign language, so we communicated really well anyway. So we
had good communication skills.
Absolutely right, yeah. So by the time William was about 3 years old, he'd already learned about 400 signs. So we'd gone right through it, we'd learned all the colours. There's you on TV, look, William. So we've gone through all the colours and all the animals, all the sounds, all furniture, foods, emotions, all those sorts of things we'd already done. So that gave us a good framework to attach spoken language to. And it was about at 3 months old when I started, at 3 years old when I started to drop the hands a touch more and try and rely on speech.
Yeah, so now I've noticed you don't really sign to William, or is that today you're trying not to sign to him? You do all your communication through speech?
Well, yeah, that's true, isn't it, William? We talk, we don't really sign that much. I only sign to William when I'm telling him off and no one else can hear it. When we go swimming, you know, example, if you go swimming, you can't wear the equipment, so...
And where does the equipment work best? I mean, for example, if he was in a big stadium full of noise, how would it work there?
Yeah. Well, the same problems are encountered if anyone's got hearing aids. The same sort of problems are going to be encountered. So they're not so good in noisy situations. But having 2 implants enhances that, but it's still difficult.
Well, the second implant came this year. Was there a reason why they wouldn't do both at the same time?
Back when the first implant was put in...
You're there again, William. Another operation.
Yeah, that's recently, isn't it? The NICE guidelines, the Institute for Clinical Excellence, their guidelines were that only 1 implant would be given at a time. Those rules changed, and then because William was a good candidate and did well with the first one, we can go for the second one. And
so what's it like having the second one, William?
Well, it was good having a second one. Well, when it just turned on, it just made me really surprised. And I feel happy and happy here where can I hear.
Yeah.
What the second implant does is it gives direction of sound. It's like 3D, if you like, so it's easy to hear where sound's coming from and things like that. And
this might sound a stupid question, but can you turn them off? Are they there permanently, or is there any kind of way that, you know, you wouldn't have them?
Well...
does a battery run out? How does it actually mechanically work?
Well, what happens is... shall we show them, William? Would you mind just taking one off, and I'll just show... Yeah. Take one off? Just one. OK. What it is this is the outside part, so this is what's called the speech processor.
You just show it to that camera there. OK.
That's a speech processor.
Right. And
there's a part which is implanted on the inside of the head.
Right, so the operation is to put something inside the skin. Yeah. And this white disc, that attaches to that
So in here is a computer, which is called a speech processor. So it takes sound in from the microphone and then codes it and then sends it across the skin using this, which is a transmitter. It's got a magnet inside it to help it stay on. And that sends signals across the skin to an implant, which, like a hearing aid, what a hearing aid does is it takes the sounds of the world and makes them louder to get someone to hear. But once you can't hear anything, making it loud doesn't help anymore. So what it does is it translates that sound into electrical impulses, and that stimulates the cochlea, and the brain then interprets that electrical impulse as sound.
It's just incredible science, isn't it? And,
Yeah.
you know, you coming from a family with hearing problems and obviously your father, what do they feel? I mean, is there an element of the deaf community that feels slightly anti this kind of equipment? Do they feel...
Well, you don't have to look far to find that sort of thing, but I think with any sort of subject to do with medicine or to do with hearing loss or any sort of disability, there's always going to be a wide range of opinions. But we have to take decisions based on what's best for us and look at our lives and how that works for us. So although I appreciate people have strong feelings either side, we've really got to ignore that and look at our lives.
What does Grandad think, William?
Well, my granddad, yeah, he's deaf and he's my best granddad.
Do you still use signing with him?
Yeah, every time I come over to his house, I'll always do sign languages.
There you are with Grandad, and he must be incredibly proud of you. What music do you like?
Well, my favourite music's like Tourette, Sleepy Jean, Daydream Believer.
That's a great song to have as your best song.
Yeah.
What a great choice. I'm sorry we can't blast it through the studio for you now. It's just a pleasure meeting both of you and explaining it so well for us there in layman's terms so we can understand the science behind it. William, thank you so much. I know that you're a bit of a sportsman. He plays practically every position in the football team by the sounds of it. And you're starting a new school as well. Is that right?
Yeah.
Best of luck at school as well. Can you hear the teachers all right?
Yeah.
Yeah? Well, that's a shame, isn't it? Oh, there you are in your uniform. You look fantastic. Well, enjoy school this week and more on this term. And thank you again so much, both of you, for coming in and talking to us.
Pleasure.
William and Andy, if you'd like more information, log on to our website, channel5.com/Right Stuff Extra. Now, after the